Welcome, everybody, to another episode of 8192 The Truth. This is Joel D. Supernaw, and we are recording from the Stafford Hills Club in beautiful Tualatin, Oregon. Now, most of you know that I've been in Kansas City it was 7 months to the day. Now, I did come back a few times, but I can tell you one thing. I miss Ladd. First and foremost, I miss Ladd. Second, I miss this club. And I tell people all the time when they ask me, hey, what should I do? I said the same thing to every single person. Join the nicest club you can. Spend the most money on a club that you can, and then make it a fabric in your life. Me and Ladd pay $170 a month to be a member here. And almost every single person that I talk to that is not a member here tells me how crazy that is, that they only pay $25 a month or $30 a month. It's not that crazy. Ladd's been raised here. It's the nicest, it's the cleanest club I've ever belonged to in my life. The staff makes you feel like family. There is a small snob element. If you're charging $170 to be a member, there is going to be a snob element, but it's not that bad. I'm going to talk about snobs here in a second. There's snobs that are at every single club. They get in little cliques. But my advice to you, no matter where you live on this planet, is prove me wrong. Go find the nicest club in town. It's going to have a swimming pool. If your club does not have a swimming pool, it's not the nicest club in town. Doesn't matter if you swim or not. You need to swim. Make yourself a swimmer. We'll talk about that later. But we are here today. It is one of my heroes isn't Randy Couture, I look up to Randy and I look up to, some other fighters, Stipe and that. But truly, one of my heroes the last several years is a guy named Bob Jordan, and I'm going to talk to him here in a few minutes. Super Bowl. Yesterday was beautiful. It was a great game, and Ladd, again, on his own, has become a football fan to a degree. So this was the very first Super Bowl him and I ever watched together. It was me, Ladd, and Miss H. She was rooting for the Patriots. We were rooting for Philadelphia. Philadelphia ended up winning. It was a fantastic time. It was a great time. And like most of you, I ate like garbage yesterday. I ate like garbage. I knew I was going to, but I talk about how alcohol affects me and how it'll affect me for an entire week. Food affects me the same way, but it only affects me until I get a workout in. I woke up this morning depressed. The world had come to an end. Everything was wrong, but I knew I was poisoned. I had food poisoning, and I came to the gym, Stafford Hills Club. I got a swim in. And now I feel great. So real quick, before we get to Mr. Jordan and the incredible story that he has for us, truly, talk about perseverance and something that you can, I say this all the time, and obviously it's working because our numbers are going through the roof, but the heroes are around you every single day. You just got to open your eyes and you got to look. And I've had the opportunity to watch Bob train for the last 5 years and then finally qualify for the World Championships. It's been an amazing story. I look forward to talking to him briefly. But I mentioned snobs. If you go to the Starbucks, if you are a person that frequents a Starbucks, there's a very, very, very good chance that there's a Starbucks snob squad inside your Starbucks. The Starbucks that I go to, and it's up on the top of the hill in West Linn, and I've known this group for years, and the group started out as a 5-group snob group. It is now developed. It looks like they have as many as 12 members. And what the snob group does is they have somebody get there early and get the cool seats. There's only 3 or 4 good seats in a Starbucks. They're the cushion seats. And the rest of the seats are horrible. I don't know how anybody sits there. But And it's interesting because I know some members of the snob group, and if they see me outside of the Starbucks, they're going to talk to me. They're going to, hey, how's lad doing? What's going on? We're going to have conversation. I've known these people for years. If I see them within their snob group, I am cast out. And I've followed this for years. It's very interesting. The reason they do it is if they talk to you, you may sit down next to them. That may appear like you've then made it into the snob group. It's not true. So, and I kind of understand their program. That is a legitimate concern for a snob group, that you think you would bring other people in, and they don't just, it's not just me that they're not trying to get in. There was a professional football player in the other day, and he knew that he could have very limited conversation within the snob group, but he was going to do it at arm length distance, so it did not appear that they were coming to the group. Well, I got him the other day. I got him on Saturday, and I didn't even know it. I get up early to go to the gym. I want to get my coffee. They open at 5:30. Boom, I'm there first. Now, the gal that came, and so I set up shop in the comfortable seat. Now, the gal that came in second, see, I didn't know she was in the snob group because she didn't look like somebody that would be in the snob group. She already had half of her breakfast. She had an avocado, but she was the ringleader. She was sent out in the snob group to get the chairs. Well, sure enough, they don't sit next to me. I have 3 of the chairs to myself. The snob group had moved over. They did not want to sit next to me and appear that I was part of their group. So I don't know if this is a statement on society, the Starbucks snob group, because guys, let me hear from you about the Starbucks snob group in your local Starbucks. They don't exist in every single Starbucks, but they do in a lot of them. So there's snobs everywhere. If you want to beat the Starbucks snob group, get there early. Be the first one there. Man, I imagine the heat she took when they got together afterwards, and they were like, does she get banished because her job was to be there first? She was slipping. She must have been coming in lately at like 5:40, and it was sliding by. Well, the Godfather got in there, took the seat, exposed them. But would I become a member of the snob group if I was invited? That's a tough question. I think not. I think not, but it's kind of like fame and royalty. You never know. You never expect it to happen. As our numbers grow, like I tell you guys all the time, I look forward to building this up and then leaving you all behind me, and then joining a better group. Okay, so do I want to join the snob? Probably. I mean, this is, maybe they listen to the show. Maybe I shouldn't have called them snobs. You never know. Equifax.com, guys. Thank you, Equifax.com, for being one of our first sponsors, one of our first paying sponsors, as opposed to there's other sponsors that you can make some money on. If you got to jump through all sorts of different hoops with sponsors, Equifax.com, they send us a check. So thank you, Equifax.com. Guys, listen, everybody should know their credit. It's costing you a bunch of money. Brother Sin, my partner, is an insurance guy. He knows it better than anybody that insurance, we all need it. We need health insurance. We need life insurance. We need car insurance. We need business insurance. It's the biggest legal scam on the planet, but we pay each and every month. Well, guess what? Over the last 15 years, the insurance companies have been doing before they insured you. They asked you for your credit. They pulled your credit. And if your credit was bad, it cost you money. You may not even know this. It's in every fabric of society. Your jobs. You may think that you are going to get a promotion at work. Did they pull your credit? Maybe there's something on your credit that you don't know about. Go to Equifax.com, get your credit pulled. And if you don't know how to read it, Get in the phone book and find somebody that does. Find somebody that can show you the inaccuracies on your credit. You deserve to have the credit that you've earned. You deserve that. One bad thing on your credit could cost you literally thousands and thousands of dollars, a job opportunity. All right, there we go. Now that we're climbing the ranks, the Godfather had to actually kick out a real spot. I believe in that, though. I believe in that now. Now, my friend, my mentor, see, he's a mentor and he doesn't even know it. He doesn't even know it. He leads by example. Bob Jordan. Congratulations, Bob. First off, my question is, the group knows you. I talk about you a lot. They know you qualified for the World Championship last year. I told this story in my terms. Bob, tell our listeners, how did you get into triathlons? How did it become something that you do every day now?
Well, Joel, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. My getting into triathlon was, it started a long time ago. I did my first Ironman in 1989. And it really started, and you're going to laugh, I know this is on a podcast, there's no video here, but you're going to laugh. I actually started out as a guy who lifted weights and wanted to pump iron. And I was in law enforcement, wasn't the biggest guy, wanted to make sure that I was strong enough to defend myself. And no matter what I did in the gym, I never got any bigger. I might have got tougher, I might have got stronger, but I never got any bigger. And then I got injured. And so I started running to get my cardiovascular up. And because I'm a little bit of a type A personality, got a lot of energy. As a new runner, I got injured right away. I ran like 3 marathons in a year. Went to Doc, and he said, well, what's wrong? I said, my knees hurt. And he said, well, tell me about what you do. I told him about I was running every day. He said, well, dude, you're in your 30s. You can't be running like that. Recommended surgery for me, knee surgery, and I thought, I don't want to be cut. I don't want anybody cutting me. But I still had this kind of desire to be fit and a whole lot of energy. And I knew that every morning I was going to want to wake up and do something. And that maybe running every day wasn't a great thing. So triathlon was really just coming of its own. It was in the early 80s. And I was laid up with a knee injury, and a buddy of mine gave me the very first edition of Triathlete magazine. And I remember reading the application, because I instantly got interested. And the application for the Ironman Hawaii was, they don't say this anymore, but back in the day, it said that if you are chosen to do this race, you will be participating in the most difficult one-day challenge on the planet. There will be 2.5 miles of swimming in the open ocean with waves and current. You will face 60-mile-an-hour Mamuku winds on the bike, heat and humidity, unbelievable. And when you run, you'll be running through lava fields that'll melt your shoes. You'll be lucky to survive this. Well, as daunting as that sounded, I thought, wow, that sounds really cool. I want to do that.
And you're laid up. You're laid up at this time.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Laid up, and I said, okay, I want to do this. So I started training for it, and I cobbled together my first Ironman in 1989, and it was a race that doesn't exist anymore called the Endurance Triathlon. It was in Sunapee, New Hampshire. For any of your listeners that don't know, Sunapee, New Hampshire is in the ski country in New Hampshire, so the bike was mountainous. But I was completely oblivious to all that. That day, I went out there with just the goal of finishing, and it took me a long time to finish, but I was the happiest guy out there.
Now, for the listeners that don't know the Ironman is a 2.5 mile swim, 112 mile bike and a full marathon. Within each section, there's a cutoff time. What are those cutoff times?
So the cutoff time has varied over the years, but it's 2 hours and 20 minutes on the swim. So you got to make the swim cutoff. In the early days, that was the only cutoff, and then at the end of the day, you had to finish in 17 hours. So you started at 7 in the morning, and they picked you up. They scooped you off the course if you were still out there at midnight. Now it's gotten a little more sophisticated now. Now there's a swim cutoff, there's a bike cutoff, and of course there still is the 17-hour cutoff.
Do you know how they came upon the 17-hour?
Yeah, it had to do with essentially it rose from the way they pick the events. So the 2.4 mile swim was actually borrowing the distance from the Waikiki rough water swim, because the race originated, the full distance originated in Hawaii. So it came from the Waikiki rough water swim, 2.4 mile swim. The ride around Oahu, which was a 112 mile bike, and the traditional 26.2 mile run distance. And it was essentially some military guys over a beer, might have been some alcohol involved, were arguing about which would be the toughest athletes, the person who could win the Waikiki rough water swim, the ride around Oahu, or a marathon. And so the founder, John Collins, who's a Navy commander, said, let's put all three of these events together, and whoever can finish it. Notice there wasn't any talk about speed. Whoever can finish it, we'll call him an Ironman. And he was a welder. He handmade trophies that had a nut as the head. You'd have to have a hole in your head to do this thing. I'm very proud to say I have one of those. And
a hole in your head or the nut?
Both.
All right.
Both.
Okay.
So there were crazy distances. The people that first showed up, they didn't know how to train for it, because nobody had ever trained for something that took that long. 3 sports in such rigorous conditions. And the first guy that won it, he was named Gordon Haller, 1978. Came in like 11 hours and change. And he was the very first Ironman champion. But there was a really tough Navy SEAL who was really leading most of the race, and he had some of his buddies there were support crew. In those days, you could have your own support crew, and they were so confident of him winning and such a gung-ho spirit that during the marathon, they gave him a beer. And he was so dehydrated towards the tail end of the race, he drank that beer down and became, he got a little loopy. And this guy, Gordon Haller, who was a taxi driver in Honolulu, passed him and became the first Ironman champion. And that's the lure of Ironman. Then from there, the sport really grew. ABC Wild World of Sports covered it one year, and the number of people doubled who applied for it.
Well, now the year that they covered it wasn't it also the year that the gal basically crawled to the finish line?
So yes, and so the very first coverage of it was the ABC Wide World of Sports, Sports Illustrated covered it, and so a lot more people applied. And then in 1982, Julie Moss.
There we go, Julie Moss.
She was covered by ABC Wide World of Sports, and she was in the lead in the women's group, and she collapsed 100 yards from the finish and was starting to crawl and wobble her way to the finish line, and she was passed by the number 2 female. And it was such dramatic footage of her determination and grit to make it across the finish line that from that day on, Ironman became this iconic, legendary quest.
Now, within that, because I remember watching that, and I've always looked back and said, it's still a bucket list of mine. But within almost every single Ironman triathlon, that happens somewhere, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it does. You're running along or riding along, and just the sheer exhaustion and pressure of the day starts to get to you. And you start to wonder, what am I doing?
Does
out
that
here?
does that come every one? Does it? Do you question yourself every one where it's just like, I've been out here 8 hours. What am I doing?
Absolutely. There's every race I fantasize about quitting. I fantasize about quitting. I curse myself for having signed up. And that's really, to me, one of the values of doing Ironman is that at that moment, you're at a decision point. And you've either got to say to yourself, suck it up, princess, dig deep, and keep moving, or throw in the towel and walk away a loser. And how you make that choice defines how you're going to feel that night and the next morning. So I have definitely had that moment where I said, what am I doing out here? One race, just to show you what can happen, it's my second Ironman. I had such a good experience my first one. I signed up for another one the very next year, and I had been sick. It was actually, I actually signed up and did this Ironman during my honeymoon. So this is maybe not a proud moment, but I entered this Ironman. I'd been sick right before it, but I was determined to do it. Had a good swim, had a good bike. It was very, very hot that day. Started the run, and as I was running, I had the self-doubts. Self-doubts like, I don't know if I can finish this. I'm so far behind. And I thought to myself, I'm running so slowly here, I don't think I'm going to make the 17-hour cutoff. And I sat down on the curb. And in a moment of weakness, the sag wagon pulled up to me and said, hey, pal, you doing all right? You want to ride? And in a moment of weakness, I gave in. I said, I do. And I got on the bus, and the guy said to me, so what happened to your race, buddy? I said, well, I was running along, and I started to think I'm just not, I don't think I'm going to be able to finish. And there I was at mile 4, and I looked at the time. I tried to do the math. I said, I don't think I'm going to finish. And he says, then what happened? I says, well, mile 4, I sat down on the curb, and then you came along and picked me up. And there was this silence, and he says to me, hey, brother, I didn't pick you up at mile 4. I picked you up at mile 18.
Oh, no.
So,
wow.
I was just, I couldn't do the math in my head. I was that tired.
Sure.
Maybe dehydrated. So I vowed to never let that happen again. And so that you do have that kind of epiphany, that rebirth during every race, and
sure.
what you do with it. And I've had races where I did really well, even though, like at mile 16 on the run, I was ready to throw in the towel.
At that point, you're pot committed, though. You're like, how can that's a great story. I didn't see that coming. That's a great story. But at some point, you've got to be. I'll crawl from here. I'm in this thing 10 hours. Now, you just qualified for the World Championship. That's a great story, and we're going to get to it. But you had competed about 20 years ago in the championship under an exemption.
Yes, I did. And so really for all those years prior to 97, which was the first time I did Hawaii, all those years I had wanted to get in. And the way you got in was you either qualified or you entered a lottery. And so I was living in San Diego, and I would enter the lottery every year. And there was no kind of internet or email or that sort of thing. You went to your mailbox, and on May 1st, your letter came in, said you were in from the lottery or not. And so my family, my wife and my daughter Emily at the time, they grew up with my lemming-like walk to the mailbox on May 1st, where I would be disappointed because I didn't get in. And in 1996, my daughter Emily, when she was 4, she was diagnosed with leukemia. And we moved from San Diego to Los Angeles for her to be admitted to the UCLA Med Center, for her to get an experimental bone marrow transplant. She wasn't doing good. And she was in the hospital in April of 97. And I had entered the lottery, and May 1st I thought I'd hear. Unbeknownst to me, Emily had, she wanted to get me a birthday present. My birthday is in April, and so she knew that I'd always wanted to get in the Ironman Hawaii. She'd watched this even as a little kid for years. She'd seen me train. She'd seen my walk to the mailbox on May 1st. And so she wanted to get me a birthday present, and she wrote a letter to what she called the lottery people. And she asked them to pick me. And she said that my dad's always wanted to do the Ironman Hawaii. That's his dream. I want to get him a birthday present, but I can't leave my hospital bed because I'm being treated for leukemia. Please pick him. But if you don't pick him, he'll always be an Ironman to me. So on my birthday in '97, the whole family was up at the UCLA Med Center, and the Ironman folks, of course, they could never turn down a letter like that. Who could? So they sent out a representative, and on my birthday at the UCLA Med Center, they gave me my Hawaii slot. And we lost Emily 5 days later, on April 29th. And so we moved back to San Diego, and I thought this was kind of a way for me to both live my dream, to enjoy the last gift I'd ever get from my daughter, and to help me through the grieving process. And that was my goal. I was going to work out through that summer and show up in Hawaii and live the dream. And the Ironman folks asked if they could feature me as kind of the human interest story that year, and I really wasn't that interested in it. I wasn't interested in the attention, so to speak. But my wife Terry has a much broader view of the world, and she said, "No, Bob, you're wrong. This is a story here. You need to share Emily's story." And so with her encouragement, I did. And NBC featured me as the human interest story, and really Emily was the hero to that story. And so that was the first time I did Hawaii. And as I mentioned, it was the last gift I ever got from Emily. And so somebody asked me that day during the race while I was running, what did it feel like? I said, well, I couldn't go any faster, but there was part of me that wanted to stretch it out because that was the last gift I was going to get from her. I had a great day out there. I had a great day, and I just want to relive that experience. And so that was 20 years ago. And so since then, I've gone back and done many other Ironmans. But there was one thing that happened during that '97 broadcast that, as a guy, I think you'll appreciate. And as a competitor, as an athlete, you'll appreciate. The announcer, during the broadcast, Al Troutwig, who's a very famous announcer, and he was very accurate that day. He was talking about me, he said, "Here's Bob Jordan, not lucky enough to get picked in the lottery, and not fast enough, not good enough to qualify. He got here out of the words of his daughter."
Now, you told me this story, and how did you find out he said that?
It was broadcast. That was millions of people heard that broadcast with my face. And as much as I loved that day in Hawaii and that gift from Emily, I'll have to admit, as shallow as it sounds, the guy in me was like, "Hey, you're calling me out saying I'm not fast enough?" And I always wanted to undo that statement, even though Al was true when he said it.
Yeah. So let me get this straight. Now they told you then, "Hey, if you ever want to compete in this, just let us know."
Yeah, that's true.
And you were like, "No, I'm going to qualify for this."
Yes.
20, 20 years. So did you compete? Because I've been following you for about 3 or 4 years, and so much so that the Ironmans, you can actually follow people on your phone.
Absolutely.
You can do the whole race with them, and there's been a couple times, because I know kind of where you need to get and where you need to be. There's been a couple times where I'd send you an email mid race, and then the refrigerator or the heat or something would get to you. So I've been following you for this long. You qualified last year, and a great story, but in between that race and the last 20 years, how many triathlons, Ironman triathlons, have you done trying to qualify for the World Championship?
Well, I've done 31 Ironmans. Probably 20 of them seriously trying to qualify.
And then you retired a few years ago, and you've been working harder at this than...
Yeah, and that's a big part of this. I was trying to qualify for much of those 20 races I mentioned as a guy with a 60-hour-a-week job and a family. And I would tell myself that I would end up in the middle of the pack because I had a pesky day job and a family. And although I was trying hard, I wasn't going up in the rankings. And then when I retired, I realized the next day that either I've been lying to myself for 20 years or I got to get my ass in gear. So about 3 years ago, I met a guy, an Uber athlete, local guy named Stefan Brox, multiple Ironman qualifier, almost 20 years my junior. And my wife Terry talked him into coaching me on a handshake. And he had two conditions for coaching me. One is I'd do everything he said without question. And the second is he wouldn't take a thing for it other than a handshake.
That's a good coach to find, by the way.
And he was good to his word. So he coached me my last 6 Ironmans. I have made the podium on each and every one of them.
Let's get to, and I was gone. I was in Kansas City. Let's get to the one that you qualified for last year, because this is a great story. Now prior, I'll tell you, as a former athlete, somebody that's been around athletes a long time, I can tell when a guy is overtrained. And Bob's been overtrained for a couple of years, man. He would go from triathlon to the Boston Marathon to another triathlon. There was never a break, and he was wearing it. Now, I haven't seen him. I've been gone for 7 months. I didn't see him the couple times I came here. I just saw him last week, and he looks fantastic. But let's get to you qualifying last summer or last fall. In October. You had basically just going to go do it because you could. You weren't planning on winning the thing.
I was so frustrated last year. I had done 3 Ironmans in 2016, ended up on the podium 3 times. I doubled down on my efforts in 2017. Did Ironman Boulder, came in 3rd. Did Ironman Santa Rosa, came in 3rd. And I was close. And I had the choice in July of last year to either close up my season and give up my quest to get to Kona, or try one more time. And as you point out, Joel, you're right. I was beat. I was tired. But the thought of going into the winter, all those miles under my belt, without giving it one more shot, which is more than I could handle. So, against everybody's advice, I just decided I am going to try one more time, and I'm going to let out all the stops. I had learned something from my other racing about pacing. I'm a really good trainer, and I'm a really crappy racer. I get caught up in the hoopla of the race. I'll see some guy pass me on the bike. This happened to me at Ironman Santa Rosa. I saw some guy pass me on the bike, and he just yelled, "On your left." I didn't like the way he yelled it at me. I thought he was in my age group, and I chased him for 20 miles. What the heck was I doing that for? And so I learned to pace myself better. And so at the end of the summer of 2017, I knew I had a win in me someplace, and I didn't want to go into the winter without one more chance. So I entered Ironman Maryland October 7th as my last shot. So different than almost every other race where I got my family all around me, I went out there by myself. And it was almost like this monastic experience. I didn't know a single soul at the race. I was staying by myself. And I really, on race morning, I just went inside and said, I am going to win this thing, or I'm going to have to explain to myself why I didn't, because I was going to let out all the stops. I was lucky enough there was a lady who was associated with our Airbnb. She agreed to be my spotter. This ended up to be this really fortuitous thing. She was in her 70s. I was explaining to her how to use the app that you're talking about where you track an Ironman. She was really, really good at it, but she said to me, I'm not sure I know how to work this. So what happened on race morning, I said, I want you to be, when I'm coming out of the swim, I want you to yell to me, where am I? Am I third? Am I fifth? Am I what? On the bike, tell me where I am. And on the run, can you tell me? She said she could, but she'd never worked the app before. I came out of the water, and she held up 3 fingers. You're third. You're third. I said, I was third? She was, you're third. I thought, okay, that's not a bad spot to be in. And I jumped on the bike, and I just stayed my pace.
Let me paint the picture for a lot of the audience. So in a triathlon, you cannot communicate with the competitors. You can't. The only time you can talk to them is during the run portion, or you get penalized. You can actually get taken off the road and sent to the penalty box. Now, the only way you can tell where a runner is he has his name usually on his thigh in black marker ink, and then he has a tag. This is very, very pertinent because I know how this story goes. But so you're on the bike and you're in third, Bob.
Yeah. So I come off the bike and she says to me, you're in second place. I'm starting to run at mile 1 on the run. I come off the bike. She said, you're in second place. She says, the number 1 guy is 10 minutes ahead of you.
Now, you are a heart rate trainer.
Yeah.
And your coach is a heart rate trainer.
Well, so Watt's on the bike, but heart rate on a run.
Okay. Watt's on a bike. You train that.
Right.
That also probably equates to your heart rate somewhere.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Right.
So where, over the course of 11 and a half, 12 hours where you finish at, where are you wanting your heart rate to be?
Perfect question. For me, I wanted my average heart rate to be 75% of my maximum heart rate. So I knew from experience, from training, this is what I learned from training, is that if I stayed between 72% and 75% of my maximum heart rate, which is around 123, I'm 66, so that's my heart rate, it doesn't get as high as it used to.
Sure.
I knew if I kept it around 123 beats a minute, or roughly 72 to 75% of my maximum heart rate, I knew that if I rode the bike at that pace, I could get off and run, because I'm essentially a runner. I knew I could run. So that was my target heart rate, and that's what I did. So like on the bike, hundreds of people passed me in the first 50 miles. I passed 500 people in the last 40 miles of the bike. And I never changed my pace.
Slow and steady wins the race. You've got to commit to your training there. But as we get to the run, something happens.
So I start running, and my spotter says to me, he's 10 minutes ahead of you. I did a quick calculation. Well, if he's running 10-minute miles, that means I got to run 9-minute miles, and I'll only catch him at mile 10. That means I got a 16-mile foot race with somebody who can run 9-minute miles. And I thought, oh man, this is going to be, and I knew a 9-minute pace would put me more like 80% of my maximum heart rate. And at that moment I said, I've got to catch this guy. I've got to let go of my training and my plan and find this guy first. So I started running, my pace picked up, I just wanted to catch this guy. And you run with your age on the back of your leg. And at mile 4, I saw this guy. And he had 3 things that made me think he was in my age group. Again, I'm 66. 3 things that made me think he was in my age group. He had a 6 on the back of his leg. One of the numbers was faded, but it's 6. He had this kind of scrawny old guy neck. I can kind of say that because I'm an old guy. He had kind of a scrawny old guy, skinny neck, like chicken neck. And the third thing was he was grouchy. Like when he ran past the aid station, he yelled, "Water, water, not Gatorade." And you never do that in a race. These people are volunteers. They're helping you. You never bark at something. But he was an old guy. I thought, well, he's just being crabby, cranky. So I saw this guy, but he was at mile 4. And I thought, okay, this is him. But I thought, okay, something's going on here. I do not want this guy to know I'm on his tail. So I decided at mile 4, I'm never going to let him out of my sight. And I stayed right at his tail. I was so...
How far?
I was so close to him, Joel. I don't know if I can say this.
You can say anything. It's a podcast.
I stayed so close to him that if he farted, I could smell it. And he did, and I did. I stayed right on top of him. And I made sure that I stayed enough so he wouldn't know I was behind him. Because I knew I had to make a move, and I wanted to...
How sure are you that he's the guy?
Well, he had the 3 traits. He had a 6 on his leg, and what I thought was, he had a 6, some smeared 6 on his leg, his left calf. He had that scrawny old guy neck, and he was cranky.
And this is mile 4.
This is mile 4 I caught him.
Okay.
So from mile 4 to mile 9, I stayed right on this guy's tail. And my heart rate started to get up there, and I thought, I cannot let him go, and I can't stay with him. But I thought, I'm not going to give up this race now. And I'm running along, I'm wondering what to do, and at mile 9, my spotter, she goes to call out to me, and I put my finger over my mouth like, shh. I didn't want this guy to hear I was right behind him. And when he passed a little bit, she says to me, "You're number 1." I said, are you? I said, what about this other guy? His name was Jeff, I think, in front of me. She goes, "Bob, you're number 1.
But you don't believe her.
I don't believe her because I said she's like in her 70s. She admitted she didn't know how to work this app.
Yeah. And you're crazy now.
I'm now
by this time you're mad.
Oh, I'm mad, and I've been out there over 9 hours, and in the heat, and I'm starting to bake, and now I don't know what to believe. So I thought, okay, I've got to resolve this right away. So she said, "You're number 1." I didn't believe her, so I spent all my energy to catch up to this guy, and I ran alongside this guy, and it's something you don't usually do during a race, which is talk to the other competitors.
Sure.
I turned to this
Well,
guy.
you can only talk to the only time you can talk to him, if I'm correct, is during the run.
You can racers
say,
can
"Good
talk to each
job."
other. Yeah, you can't accept help from an outsider.
Okay.
So I ran up next to this guy. I said, "Excuse me, sir. Are you in the 65 to 69 age group?" And he's running along, not missing a beat, and he looks over to me to the left and says, "Fuck you, pal, I'm 46. So at that moment, I realized I'd been chasing this guy from mile 1 to what was now mile 10, and he's 20 years younger than me.
Well, so and you passed up number 2 somewhere along the way.
Somewhere along the line.
You couldn't pick him out in the crowd.
I could not pick him out. And I think one of the reasons is some guys wear these compression socks that cover your age.
Okay.
So later on, that turned out that's what happened. The number 2 guy had these compression socks on, and I couldn't.
Okay, so you pick him up. So at mile 10, do you believe you're in first place?
I do.
Okay.
I do. And then I realized, well, the good news is I'm in first place. But the bad news is I have no idea where number 2 is. and I've got 16 miles, almost 3 hours of running, and with this uncertainty. So for the next 16 miles, I ran like someone was chasing me with a knife. I mean, and I was just like, my anxiety level was going through the roof.
You never believed you thought you were in first place, but you never believed it.
I couldn't trust it. I just couldn't trust it. And so I literally was running like someone was chasing me with a knife. And the picture, they take pictures of
Sure.
me, and the run pictures of me.
You're always
I'm all
looking behind.
over my shoulder. And that's the way it was. I was so worried, and I just kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. I wouldn't let myself walk. I wouldn't stop.
So this and you finished in that was a PR, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Just a little bit over 12 hours.
12 hours and 5 minutes.
Now even though we've talked about this, the World Championship in your division last year, it was windy, it was this, it was that, but didn't it win at like 11:45?
Yeah.
So now that you qualify, this is a 20-year goal, that he could have took the easy way out the whole time. He could have went to the championship. He could have got in, went to the championship. In some way, would that have you couldn't do that to your daughter's memory?
Well, one thing was very important to me was it was, of course, an honor to go there as a gift from Emily. And when they invited me back on other occasions, it did occur to me I didn't want to trade off on her memory. And I really respect the athletes who put in the work to qualify. And I wanted to be one of those guys. And that's really what it was. I wanted to kind of get there on my own. I definitely enjoyed Emily's gift and will be grateful for it forever. But I wanted to erase that thing that Al Trautwig said, that I wasn't fast enough.
Now, didn't somebody remember that at the one that you won? Didn't somebody?
So because I was featured in this race, there's a lot of folks that knew who I was, knew who Emily was, and my wife Terry. And so at the awards ceremony for Maryland, they figured out who I was. And so the announcer said, there's a group of 1,000 people there, said I normally just give out at the awards ceremony, just give out the awards, and the folks who earned a slot to Kona, they get their Kona slot, but I want to point out this guy. And he said, we have with us Bob Jordan, who got there 20 years ago because of his daughter's letter, and for the last 20 years he's tried to get here on his own. He says, and it's always bothered him that Al Trautwig said he wasn't good enough or fast enough. Well, yesterday's race, he won his age group, and he was fast enough. And 1,000 people stood up and gave me a standing ovation while I got my Kona slot. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house, and mine was the wettest.
That's awesome. His wife Terry's crying right now, by the way. And that I tell you, see, I talk about this. I talk about this all the time. There's heroes around you, and you can usually find them because they're not going to find you. They're not going to tell you. I was a member for probably a year before I ever spoke with Bob and learned these things. But I guarantee this is going to be a great episode. And what is the teaching points here? What's the points here? The point is that we don't want to go to the gym today and work out for 45 minutes, okay? And Bob chased a giant for 20 years to qualify in the most. Now there are crazy other races in the world. People do ultra this and ultra that, but you're not going to find a harder event to do a 2.5 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, and then a marathon at the end, and do it in which Bob's going to do under 12 hours. So how has your training been since you qualified?
Well, I think the conventional wisdom should have been I should have taken an off season and and rested a little bit, I just couldn't do it. I wouldn't recommend this. Kind of like this. Don't try this at home. I don't know that I would recommend this for anybody else, but I crunched the numbers on the folks who didn't just win an Ironman, but won at the championship. My age group competitors in Kona. I looked at their numbers, and I basically said, my goal is I want to end up on the podium at Kona, the championship. And so what do I have to do to get there? And so I've been crunching those numbers. I've basically got to get faster on the swim. I got to generate more watts on the bike, and I got to run faster. Not
Yeah. What you figured took him 20 years to figure that one out, Terry?
And so in a very orderly and systematic way, I have set my sights on doing that. So to that end, I've entered Ironman Boulder in June as basically a test. How am I doing? Where have I gotten faster? What do I feel like? What needs to be improved? And as a warm-up for Kona in October. So whatever lessons I learned from doing Boulder, as I plan to go as fast there as I can, I want to walk away from Boulder with lessons. What do I need to do in the ensuing weeks after that, before Kona, to tune up my training to do, not just finish Kona, but see if I can end up on the podium there. Because there's 40 other guys in my age group, 65 to 69, that will have won a qualifying Ironman and will be standing at Digby Beach in Kona in October, that will be my competitors. Each and every one of them, someone who won an Ironman just like me. But there's only going to be a handful of those guys end up on a podium at Kona.
I like how you put yourself in there, as you already know you're going to be there. Couple questions. Now that you qualified for this, now that you slayed the dragon, how long do you foresee yourself being a triathlete? I mean,
so I really have two goals. I want to keep doing it as long as it's fun and challenging. And somebody might look at that and say, "Oh, that means he's going to do Kona once and walk away." But I did my first Ironman in 1989, so I'm coming up on 30 years of just Ironman training, and I've never lost my zeal for it. I wake up in the morning and I just want to go. I want to hit it hard. So I want to keep doing it as long as it's fun. Parenthetically, it's been fun for almost 30 years. The second thing is I want to win my age group in Kona. And I don't care if I'm the only guy in that age group. One of my heroes is, these guys that were setting course records in their age group in their 70s. Here's a guy in his 80s that finished Ironman Kona. That gives me another 20 years.
Well, but let's look at this. I mean, that was your PR. Just a little bit over 12 minutes. We're going to beat that either in Denver or at the championships, because quite frankly, if you don't beat your PR on that race, don't come back. I mean, right? I mean, don't. I mean, you can't lay an egg on the race that you tried to get to and just be like.
Well, everybody tries as hard as they can at Kona because it is the World Championship, but they have the conditions out there. It is true they have incredible crosswinds and headwinds on the bike, and you are running through lava fields that are likely going to be in the mid-90s.
Sure.
So you have to put yourself against the field. Very few people show up at Kona expecting to have a PR.
Sure.
Because of the conditions.
Well, we don't believe any of that, and we're gonna break 12 hours. And I tell you, seriously, for me, it's been really, really cool watching you do this, because I know how much it means to you, and I know how much time it takes. There's almost never a time that I come here between 5:30 in the morning, because I'm an early guy, and 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning that you're not here. And I come here a lot. I mean, it's my spot. I'm pretty excited. I'm hoping, out of all of the things that I want to do this year, going to Kona, and watching you compete, that's really, really high, because it's such a lesson for Ladd. I mean, if you're going to exercise, if you're going to work out, man, find a 10K, find a 5K, find something, because the guys on television that get all the fame and fortune, the Super Bowl champs, the world champs, this is a fight-based fan base that we started with. Those guys are awesome. They're awesome, but you can do the same thing. You can train the same thing, and I guarantee you, when I ask Bob, you don't feel any different than when you're training, that you're training for the world championship, when you swam this morning, when you run tonight. Doesn't that go into the process of your now you're not exercising, you're actually working towards something bigger than just that workout?
Yeah, I mean, I have a goal right in front of me. What my goals are. I very seldom go out for a casual workout. I know exactly what I'm trying to accomplish. A swim set. I have a printout that I stick on the kickboard. What am I supposed to be doing? How many yards? At what pace? I keep those goals right in front of me. When I jump on the bike, I never just toot along there. I've got goals, specifically what I want to accomplish during that hour ride, 2-hour ride, 3-hour ride, whatever. And the same with a run. If it's a recovery run, maybe my goal is just to go 3 miles at an easy pace. But I try to build some intensity into each and every workout I do. And there's goal-based. And I like numbers. I like crunching numbers. So I have a goal, write it out, start of the week. My coach helps me with that. And then I check and see, how did I do that week? And a good week is when I get all my workouts in and I'm not injured. And that's because I've built towards this success. I built towards over years. At being 66 and having 31 Ironmans under my belt and not being injured is not an accident.
The training point there that jumps out at me is, write it down. This is a guy that's been doing this for 30 years, but every week you have it written down. Every week going into the week what you're going to do, and a successful week is knocking off all of your exercise, all of your workouts, and not getting injured.
Right.
That's a really, really simple, but how many of us go through the week, if I can get 3 or 4 workouts in, I'll be happy. We're off the, that's the big point for me. We'll have Bob on the show after. Hopefully we'll have him on. Hopefully me and Ladd can get out to Kona. Now, I've actually raced the only triathlon I ever did was on that course. I did the half. And I'll tell that story at some point. But anyway, Bob, thank you for coming on, guys. Go to Equifax.com, pull up your credit. We're going to have more guests on the show like this. I've been wanting to talk to Bob for a while. I learned a lot here that will motivate me. Give me your feedback. And that's it, guys. Thanks for joining us. Peace.
So what do you